All right, looks like we're live again. Second video of the night. This time I decided to carry on with the example found on page 8 of the ASL Starter Kit number 1 rule book. Right here. There you go. So what I'm going to do in this video is go through defensive first fire. I just have the example up here on the board, and you can see here it's the, I got to put the right phase in, so I'm going to go, there we go, correction, back one, there we go, it is the movement phase. Defensive first fire is a special kind of fire that happens during player A's movement phase when player B is able to engage whenever an enemy unit expends movement factors within its line of sight. Remember that, expends movement factors is the key thing. Not necessarily move. There are some things you can do to expend movement factors. For example, you can try to recover weapons, place infantry smoke. And I don't want to say anything more than that because, again, I want to talk about starter kit. Okay, here it is the Soviet player's turn. And they're in a city. And we can see here over in Hex K5, there was a German first line squad with a light machine gun. And what's going to happen is this. I'm going to show some movement. I'm not going to roll the dice because the dice, I want certain results or certain specific results. And I just want to show how things can happen using this game, using this system. Okay, so as the movement phase, there's been no fire so far. And the first thing I want to remind everybody is that when a unit is not marked with any type of fire, either first fire or final fire. If it's not marked with either of these two, it can shoot at any enemy unit within its line of sight as long as it's up to and including double its normal range. In the case of the 4.67, his range is 6, we can fire out to 12 hexes. The light machine gun's range is 8, and it can fire out to 16 hexes. Remember a previous video, it talks about long range fire, normal fire, and point blank fire. That's what we're going to go through here. Okay, just to demonstrate what they can do and to show that it's in its line of sight. And again, this is not talking about the ideal time to fire, it's just talking about when to talking about the fire itself. Here we have a 5.27, and he decides to use non-assault movement. He's going to try to move up to I4. He expends 2 movement factors into H4, and at this point the German decides, you know what, I want to shoot at him, but I want to shoot with just my inherent firepower. He will first mark his squad with first fire, noting that the LMG counter is above that. And this is how you do it on the physical board as well. So he decides he's going to fire at him. We know he's in normal range because he's only 3 hexes away, so his firepower is 4. The modifiers: +3 for being in a stone building, but -1 for first fire non-assault movement. The net firepower is a firepower of 4. Dice roll modifier +2. I said I wasn't going to roll dice. I'm just going to roll dice to see what they say, and I roll a 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. It's no effect. However, before we carry on, there will be some residual firepower, and you'll place a 2 in that location. And there's nothing else that happened. Point to note, cowering hasn't happened. There's no leader direction, so we're good so far. This squad decides to keep moving and decides to move to I4. At this point, the squad says, you know what, I do have to fire at him, and I'm also going to use my light machine gun. The squad is marked with first fire, so therefore his one restriction is he can only fire with subsequent first fire, which this is, as long as the enemy is within normal range and there are no other enemy units closer. The 5.27 is 2 hexes away. It's about the only unit that he can see at this time, so that's fine. So there's nobody closer. It's well within normal range. He can fire with his inherent firepower. His inherent firepower will be marked final fire, and the light machine gun will as well because the squad is firing with them. So a firepower of 2 from the light machine gun plus the 3 from the 2 from the squad because it's halved. 3 from the light machine gun's net 5. There's no 5 column, so it's on firepower 4. The modifiers are the same. +3 for the stone building, -1 for first fire non-assault movement. Another shot. In this case we rolled an 8. 8 plus 2 is 10. There's no effect, and there's still 2 residual firepower in there. So that squad is now marked with final fire, and he has certain restrictions on him. The restriction with marked with final fire is he can only fire at units that expend movement factors when they're adjacent to him. And I'll make a demonstration now. Down here in hex H6 we have a conscript squad. And the conscript squad is going to try to get up close in building J5 so they can assault this guy later in the close combat phase. Spends non-assault movement for 1 into the road at I6. There's no shots. Nobody else can see him. And even if that guy could see him, he can't fire because he is out of line of sight. Next, the squad comes into an adjacent, and at this point, the squad decides to, you know what, we're in a desperate situation here, we're going to use what's known as final protective fire. Final protective fire is a certain type of fire that units marked with final fire can use. If an enemy unit expends movement factors in a hex adjacent to it, it can engage with final protective fire. The modifiers to the firepower are this. They are doubled for point blank fire, yet they're halved for already being marked with final fire. In other words, it's just marked with its normal regular firepower, or printed firepower, I should say. A point to note, if you have a support weapon, you must use it, and the support weapon, because it's already been fired, is subject to an easier breakdown. In other words, its breakdown number is reduced by 2. We can see the light machine gun. I'll just bring it to the front. You can see here it doesn't have any B number on it, so that just means its breakdown number is 10. So in this case, the breakdown number drops down to, it's 12. It drops down to 10, and the original B number becomes an X number. So if I roll a 12, not only does that machine gun malfunction, but it's at the point where it cannot be used again in the game. So he fires. I rolled a 6. It cowers. Remember, it's a firepower 6. Dice roll modifier +3 for the stone building, -1 for first fire non-assault movement. Therefore, it's a 6 plus 2. He did cower, so it takes it down to the 4 column. 6 plus 2 is 8 on the 4 column is no effect, and is marked with 2 residual firepower factors. One thing I didn't say is the special effect on the squad that is firing final protective fire. A squad, or any unit that fires final protective fire, the original dice roll done on it is also a normal morale check against him, with all the bad and or good things that could happen. We're talking starter kit, so it's only bad things that could happen. I guess the good thing is nothing happens. In this case, the 6 on the morale check against the 4, 6, 7 is no effect. So he's marked it such. Here's something else to take point of. Please note that I said that anytime a unit expends movement factors adjacent, they can be engaged with final protective fire. Also note that the conscript expended 2 movement factors to move into that hex. If that squad chose to, they could fire again on the second movement factor. Again, it would be a final protective fire with all the good and or bad things that could happen. Easier breakdown of the support weapon that must be fired along with it, and it's also a normal morale check. At this point, the German says, you know what, there's more infantry to come, I'm going to save my bullets for something else. And at this point, the Soviet decides to come a little closer with some more troops. And we see down here in F6 we have a 447. The 447 decides to move up adjacent as well. Comes up the road for 1, no firing. 2, no firing. 3, there's no shots at this point. Please note that yes, the squad does have him in line of sight. However, even if he were only marked with first fire, he would not be able to fire at him because there is a squad that is closer. At this point, the 447 that has expended 3 movement factors decides to try to press his luck and expend one more and move adjacent. At this point, the squad, the 467 with the light machine gun, decides to employ final protective fire again, this time at the unit in the open. Let's talk about the modifiers. Moving in the open is, first fire moving in the open is -1, and first fire non-assault movement is -1 for net dice roll modifier of -2. Firepower 6, DRM -2, and the roll is a normal morale check without modifiers on the firing squad. 6s are evil because I keep getting them. So immediately the firepower of 6 cowers to 4. So now it becomes a 4 -2. 4 on the 4 column. Again, if we pull it up here, there's the 4 column. Follow my tracer down. It goes to a 1 MC. 1 morale check, and there will be 2 residual in that hex. Also note, with a rolling a 6 means that that squad did not pin or break. 1 morale check on the squad in the open. Rolled a 9, +1 is 10, which exceeds its morale, so it does break, like this, and is done moving. And I'll put the residual on top. Now you may ask yourself, what happens with residual firepower? What is its effect? The effect of residual firepower is that it will attack anybody that expends movement factors, makes itself more vulnerable in that hex. We have one more squad here, and he's going to come up the road, and he's going to actually try to get adjacent to that guy again. And watch what happens. 1, 2 to H5, 3 to I5, and 4 to J4. There's a residual firepower in there. Irrespective of the decision of the defending player to fire or not, what has to happen is that residual firepower happens first. Okay, so it's a firepower of 2 in there, and the dice roll modifiers apply the same as before. -1 for first fire non-assault movement, -1 for first fire moving in the open for net -2. Firepower 2, dice roll modifier -2. 2s are wild. You notice I rolled a 12, which is great. Point here is that residual firepower does not cower. So even if I rolled snake eyes, 6 again with 2 3s, it would not cower. It would remain a firepower 2. That said, a net 10 on the 2 column is no effect. At this point, the 467 with his light machine gun says, you know what, I really, really, really need to fire at these guys. So it's a firepower 6. We know it's 7 firepower. That's doubled for point blank, and it's halved again for firing FPF. So it's a firepower 7, so it's on the 6 column. And the B number for the light machine gun drops from 12 to 10. It will break on a 10 or 11, and it's removed permanently from the game if they roll a 12, like I just did. So third FPF shot, here we go. Rolled a 4. 4 on the 6 column -2 is 8-2, and it's not going to be good. You can see here when I bring my cursor to it, on the 6 column, I'm down to 4, is 2 morale check. Modifiers from -2. It comes to a 1 KIA. So what that means is that squad is eliminated. A point to note for anybody that's watching this that may have been playing the old squad leader game, please note that the infantry fire table is different. It's not just KIA where it kills everybody. Also note that even though that shot was quite deadly, it only affected the unit that was expending movement factors. So the squad that is broken there had no effect on it. They could have fired snake eyes, could have fired whatever, had no effect. Alright, well, that ends the movement phase. Oops. There we go. So it's the defensive fire phase, and we're going to remove all the residuals, and this is where we are. In the defensive fire phase, any defender units can now fire with the following restrictions. If they're marked with nothing at all, they can fire at anybody within normal range. If they're marked with first fire, they can only fire at units that are adjacent to it. And if they're marked with final fire, they cannot fire at all. So in this case, the German defensive fire phase is over. It was quite effective. It was able to take out the 2 squads in the street, killed one, broke the other. There's a squad across the road, and there's a conscript right up close to it that could cause a lot of problems here. But that's as far as I want to go in this. So what I've covered here is the defensive first fire phase. Points to note is that a full squad with a support weapon can fire its inherent firepower and then later choose to fire its support weapon at full firepower. A half squad, if it's manning a support weapon, is unable to do that. Will have to fire either its inherent firepower or the support weapon. We didn't cover with rates of fire, but that's okay. We can do that at another time. I just wanted to show that you can fire the 2 of them separately there. And that's about it. We saw residual firepower. We saw that what the effects of final protective fire were, how to do subsequent first fire. And just remember that moving in the open, especially against Germans in built-up areas, won't go well for you. Anyway, that's it for this video for this evening. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a comment below if you have any other questions, or just leave any questions whatsoever. For example, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And keep in mind, you can keep it focused on starter kit, or if you want, we can go to full rules ASL. There's no need to. ASL starter kit has plenty of scenarios and a lot of fun. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.